Every Night is Game Night, episode 64, Top 100 People's Choice Solo Games, Part 1. Hey guys, welcome back to Every Night is Game Night. This is Anthony once again with Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
All right, guys, and if you remember correctly, not quite a year ago, we did the People's Choice Solo Games 2016. We have Kevin Erskine on to talk about it, so we figured, why not do it again right as the list is coming out? So, Kevin, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, guys. Always fun to be here.
Awesome. So last year, this was the episode that got us bumped our ratings up pretty high. So we're pretty excited to do this. Since we have all sorts of extra people that are listening, we'll just get this out of the way right now. Please go to iTunes. If you like what you hear, rate us, go to Google Play, wherever you want. Give us the 5 stars. I really think that these are some of the best episodes that we're going to put out. Kevin is awesome at this. He's been working really hard. If you don't know, if you're just kind of stumbling into this, Kevin put together the top 100 People's Choice Solo Games list. There's a list that is active on BGG right now. So Kevin, thank you so much for your hard work. Thank you so much for your brain that can make spreadsheets, which feel like magic to me, but you make it look really easy.
Well, you're welcome. So I guess if this is a big episode, is this like a sweeps week for you guys or something?
It's a gift guide week, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of people look at this list as recommendations, how to find new games and everything.
Oh yeah, you got the warning on top of the geek list right now. Like, this will injure your wallet if you dive into this too far. So you've been forewarned.
Yeah, I was told to make that extra big this year, so I did.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I guess we could just get into the whole list itself. This is just to give people background, in case you're new to this, new to the show, new to, what this whole listing is all about. Could you give us just a brief rundown of why you came up with the list and some of the methodology around, actually bringing it to life?
Sure. It started when I watched the Dice Tower did their People's Choice, top 100 for a couple years, and I kept thinking, well, that's nice, but those are not the games that I play. And when I talk to the people who play solo, those aren't the games they play either. And I just came up with the idea that why don't we do one for solo games so we see what our people are playing, and so you see something more representative of solo gamers.
All right. And so over the course of a month, people mailed you their top 20 or their top 10 or the top 5, basically their favorite games, and you tabulated them all in a giant spreadsheet, which will be released after the entire geek list is done. So before we get started, yes, I know I tend to ramble on before we get to actual games, but I want to give a little bit of context. So just a couple things about the list itself. You mentioned before that it's getting a little bit tougher and tougher to resolve different versions of games. So like a game will come out, but then a reprint will come out. Do you merge them? Do you keep them separate? A game will come out, an expansion come out. Do you merge them? Keep them separate? So like, how do you actually go about the process of organizing the games into something that makes sense?
That is the tough one. And if a game, some of them are easy. If the game is just a new release of the same game, so it's a version 2, and it's basically the same game, I just put them all together. The problem comes in when you get releases of a game that are really similar, but they are different games. So the ones that came to mind right away are like the Dungeons and Dragons games. Castle Ravenloft and Wrath of the Shardalon they're different, but they're really the same game, same system. So we try to keep those separate. But if a game, we didn't get a lot of votes, but like the Unlock series, if someone plays those alone, I was throwing those all together. I would throw Shadows of Brimstone. I threw together partially for my benefit, because sometimes people would put something like Legendary, and like I told you before, and I'd have to ask them, well, which game are you talking about? There's so many. When they said Shadows, everybody just put Shadows of Brimstone. So that very few people specified which one. So I just put them all under one, just because it would save me about 100 more geek mails. games, some people specifically voted for Runebound second edition and the original edition or something, or third and second. And I'd say, look, I'm just going to put these together because it's effectively the same game. That I get, the latest one is soloable, but it's pretty much the same game. Some people voted for expansions. I definitely didn't. I put expansions with the base game for sure. But it's, I think legitimately, I think some of these probably should be combined. But then where you draw that line is really tough.
Yeah, I think we need to have I think you tried, but just to put it out there to people, it's like, okay, do you mind if I combine this and this, this and this? And if you get a huge roared outcry, then no, but otherwise, yes.
Exactly. And then you can't get a consensus. It's like you ask 3 people and you're probably going to get 3 different answers, which is what happened when I, posted it in the forum and asked for suggestions. And we got all kinds of answers. And I just said, you know what, I'll do it by feel.
Awesome. So just want to give people a sense of this is not easy. Putting this all together. This is really a labor of love on Kevin's part. We really appreciate all the work that you do to it. And what comes out is something that's really, really useful. Anthony, do you particularly use this list as like your own kind of guide, either for shopping or for what's hot in a certain year, or how do you use the list?
I used to. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I think my collection's healthy enough. Like last year, I remember looking through this and being like, oh, I haven't heard of a bunch of these, and feeling like, oh, man, I need to up my cred if I'm going to keep doing this podcast. A full year later, I'm like, yeah. Especially looking at all the stuff new to the list. I'm like, yep, got that. So,
we did an interview about that. We talked to that designer.
Exactly, yeah. So, almost 2 years in now with the solo stuff. I think it's more of like confirmation, like, oh, okay, this is the stuff people are playing. For me, at least, it's like, okay, cool. So I'm glad we're talking about this, or maybe we should talk about this more. But I think it's one of the first things I would send people to if they were like, where do I start? Like, well, look at this. These are the most popular games.
Definitely. Okay, so let's get into a couple of stats about the list itself. So last time we did the list, there were 22 new debuts of the 100 games. So we're not talking about a huge amount of churn. Like maybe over the life of the list, there's a lot of churn, but like 22 games relative to 75 games that are the same, that's not that huge a churn. But it's enough to kind of keep things interesting. This year, 26 new games, mostly the debuts from either late 2016 or 2017. And this is something that and Kevin, this is one thing where we really have to give it up to you. The first year you had 85 people vote. Great. You could do that with your hands, standing on your head. Last year was 364. This year, 477. It's basically proceeding upward like an asymptote. So next year, expect about 700 or so, and then on from there.
Well, it's hopefully not. Well, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that. That being, I want more, and we can handle more. I don't know if you saw the one number. There were 8,030 entries as far as games, because not everybody had 20 games on their list. So, I mean, it was, I had to type in 8,000 games.
Oh my God. Well, those are unique votes, like in terms of the actual number of games themselves. I think you got to like the 800s.
Yeah. Which think about that. I mean, if you ask people how many soloable games are there out there, and people would probably say, I don't know, 50, maybe 100, and the people who really know might say 200. To think that you just randomly asked people and they came up with 800 unique games. Now some of them I'd never play solo, but somebody does.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah, guys, I made you wait long enough. Let's get on to discussing the list. So we're going to do this in chunks because that's how Kevin has laid it out. That's how Board Game Geek sets up the geek list, and chunks of 25. So we are releasing this on Friday just as numbers 100 through 51 should be complete. So we are only going to talk about games from 100 to 51. Next week, we're going to talk about the whole list, and that'll be a full spoiler cast because that episode, part 2, will release on the Friday that Kevin releases 10 through 1. So this week, don't worry about spoilers. We're not going to spoil the rest of the list. It's just 100 to 51, which is what you could see on Board Geek right now. So let's talk about 100 to 76. And I'm going to refer to this as under the radar gems. As Anthony was kind of alluding to, you can look at a list like this sometimes and say, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could play that solo or whatever it is. Like, you're going to find that here probably more than the rest of the list. The rest of the list is generally stuff we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's some surprises in here, you know? So I'm talking about games like Walnut Grove.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think someone mentioned it once on a thread and it kind of caught. Maybe it was like a solitaire game on your table and then it's out of print. What is this game doing on the list? What is this game debuting on the list for? That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it went up, 20 places from last year or something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's for a game that there's no reason for it to go up. None. Except people talk about it and talk it up, and next thing you know, everybody wants it.
Yeah. Somehow this one's on my radar. I don't actually remember why. But sometime back in the spring, there must have been a thread or a podcast or somebody was talking about this.
It shows up on that solitaire games on your table a lot. That's the only time I ever see it. I've never actually seen it played.
Mm-hmm. I've never even seen it. I don't even know if it exists in real life. I think it's just like a MacGuffin or something, just like some random thing that people think, oh, this is a nice worker placement tile laying something game. And I really thought it was like, you know, a joke on people, but hey, whatever. People, it's right there above 800 other games. So a game like Limes also is kind of a game that only hardcore solo players know. Kevin, I'm glad for your sake that we got a little bit more Rallyman. I think at 75.
Yeah.
So that's a Kevin Erskine special right there.
No, not me.
Just people.
Yeah, people. I mean, I think because they have all the challenges every month and stuff. I think that's why. I've even asked recommendations and people said, "Nah, it's not that good." I'm like, "Why does everybody play it?" And they said, "Well, the challenges make it fun." So
so people make it fun.
Yeah, you have a league. I mean, they have basically a league every month of you run your race and report your score, and they keep track of it, and so it's a lot of people do that every single month, and so they want to get it. I've never played it.
Okay, Anthony, anything that stuck out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to see the stuff that kind of hops onto the list here, and then kind of where it falls. So I think one of the things I was looking for and wondering where it would land on the first list was First Martians. So seeing it up here kind of towards the top, I don't know if I'm surprised based on the reception, but it is an interesting, spot for it to enter the list in the 80s. Other new one.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was on the Terraforming Mars track. Like Terraforming Mars debuted last year in like the 20s. Scythe debuted, I think, at 7. So like I thought First Martians was going to come in with that kind of House of Fire. Maybe not 1, but like, somewhere in the top 10. For it to land, I think it's like 92. I forget exactly what the number is. I don't have the number list in front of me, but like the fact that
83.
First Martians is here, 83. I mean, that's for a hype game like that. I feel like, honestly, you mentioned about the reception. I feel like people are talking so much crap about it that it is now underrated, if that makes sense.
I think so. I think the negativity is a little overblown. Like the issues people have are there, but they're not as bad as some other people now think. So those people who have played it have a nice experience on their hands with the campaign and everything. So that's a thing. A couple other games I was happy to see on here. Dresden Files, card game. That's a fun one. It's just eked in there, I think, at 98, 99. Clans of Caledonia just came out, and I just got a chance to play it, but it's got a nice little solo mode, too. So good to see some Euro representation, new stuff on the list.
We'll get to the Euros in a second, buddy. Don't you worry.
I'm getting it in while I can, man. And then another version of Pandemic had to jump on the list. With Iberia, because we need another version of Pandemic on this list.
It's funny you mentioned that, man. I actually was going to point that out. So I asked a bunch of people like for random stats, like ideas for random stats, and one of them was they wanted to. Some people wanted to know what was the largest fall within the top 100. So I'll get to the largest fall out of the top 100 next episode when we can talk freely about spoilers. But within the top 100, the biggest fall was actually Pandemic: The Cure, which landed at 76, 41 spots down. And also both Forbidden games are also in here, I definitely feel like the pandemic is spreading out among all of these different properties. That's kind of what's happening. So like some people like Iberia, some people like the Cure game. Don't know how long that's going to be on the list, but I feel like, if there was like one pandemic to rule them all, it would just be, bam, number whatever. But now that there's a bunch of them and it fulfills different roles, you're going to get a little bit of spread,
Yeah, it gets a little watered down, which to be fair, Iberia is my favorite of the pandemics, but still another one.
Yeah, I think you're right about the spreading, because I noticed that with the legendary stuff where there's so many different versions now, and I think some people voted for more than one, but a lot of people would pick their favorite and vote for it, and so I think it splits it a little, so it gets watered down.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's games that you would normally see kind of higher on the list because they are part of a family of games. They get diffused and spread, and either they end up on the bottom of this list or completely off in a lot of cases. Another one that I wanted to point out, this is from BGG user Jokemeister. He asked, biggest return to popularity due to an expansion? None. In the sense that like at least I didn't see a game that was like up there, then dropped, and then came back because of an expansion. But I think there is a game or two here that does get a boost from its expansion, and it's here because of that. I'm thinking particularly of Orleans, which you can't even play that solo without the expansion, and also Russian Railroads, which I know is a favorite of yours, Anthony, because of the German Railroads expansion.
Yeah, that's not only the German Railroads expansion just fixed a lot of the things that people would complain about the game so that I couldn't get to the table, but the solo version's pretty solid. I really enjoy it. So it's nice to see that represented by some votes here.
It's funny you said that about Orleans, though, but it's exactly where it was last year. It's in the same spot.
And that's why it's there. I guess that's why it's there.
No change.
It wouldn't even be there.
I think some of them did get a boost because of a reprinting, though. I think Fields of Fire is one that, it just got reprinted, and because the war games don't usually go very high. So I was kind of glad to see that one make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to bite our tongues a little bit about the bottom of the list for spoiler's sake. But yeah, when we get to the next episode, that one will probably be a little bit longer because we can get into the later ones, and we could talk about what's on there. But it's fun to talk about at least what's on here. So okay, so I think that's about it for this group of games. Unless you guys have something else that jumps out at you.
No, not really.
Oh, I have here Space Cadets Away Missions. What in the heck is that game doing here? It was released 2 years ago. Nothing came out for it, and it just has been a slow climb. It's weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just like the low total number of votes. These vagaries can kind of happen, but I don't know.
I've seen it recommended a lot lately.
Okay. But why?
And I wonder
just because.
Well, are you saying you don't like it?
I don't know. It's weird. It came out. It's one of those games. It came out. It came and went, and nobody's talking about it except, I guess, some people who just kind of glommed onto it, and here it is. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know.
Cool. All right. So let's get on to 75 to 51. You mentioned about war games. And just like last year's list, there was a significant amount of clumping of the most popular war games in this section. Again, not commenting on any potential war games that are higher, but I'm talking about in terms of frequency, you just see a lot of them. And that happened here as well. So, you got Conflict of Heroes, you got Thunderbolt Apache Leader, you got D-Day at Omaha Beach, and actually, as Navajo Wars and Comancheria, are those war games? Am I doing that right?
They're GMT games, so they're basically war games. Yeah, I mean, they're a little different. They're card based.
Yeah, they're not dudes in a map type things, but it's still in that kind of world and everything. So just like last year, this year we do have a preponderance of those. Anthony, actually, the highest one I've rated of these is Comancheria. Is that something that you agree with? Because I know you played this.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played a lot of these, so I can't compare, but having played Comancheria, I can say it's a very good game. And it's the length and depth of the game means that if you do play this, you're going to be playing it for a very long time. So I feel like, I don't know if there's any way to correlate the length of some of these games with where they rank, but it's like if you play that game and it takes 8 hours and you play it 4 or 5 times, I could see it being up on your list.
Right. Actually, that's good. That's a good point. I forgot to mention that in the intro. Another user asked about the quote unquote hype train. We'll get to that in a second. But like, I think when you get a list like this, especially with the Dice Tower where there's so many votes and like, a game will be hot and then cold, it'll debut at 20 and the next year is at 76 and then the third year is it's off the list. So it's like, it just kind of, you have a lot of flashes in the pan, or at least more of them. On this list, not so much. And I think why is because as solo gamers, we can play the games that we like a lot. So, we get a game and it's hyped and whatever. But we don't just like play it once and think it's gaga and put it on high on the list. We play it a lot. And if it's good, it's good. And if it's not, we're not going to vote for it.
Well, I think another factor is that, like, take the one player guild on BGG. I think last year there was like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 members, and now it's at 8,000. And I think you're getting a lot more solo gamers in, and when they come into it, they get the same recommendations. So, a lot of the games you see at the top are the ones that are getting recommended, and so those people come in and they start at the games that we've already played and maybe aren't on our list anymore. So we don't have them on our list, but someone else has it on their list. A new person who's voting has it on their list. And next year they may take it off their list and move something else on, but you get more solo gamers. Whereas, with the Dice Tower, they're not really getting more gamers necessarily. They're just getting different votes. Whereas we're getting more people each time. So I think that's one reason I think you get a lot of the same games staying up there. That's like the gateway solo games.
Oh, so like we're grandfathering games? It's like, here, my child, play Star Realms.
Well, I mean, you've seen a recommendation for it. If someone says, hey, I'm new to solo games and, I want to start, where do I start? And I can tell you 5 games that are going to get recommended in the first 3 responses.
That's probably true.
So,
and people like us, we're not playing them anymore.
Right. I mean, I did play them. Every game that I would recommend to someone starting, I played. I don't think any of them are in my top 20 anymore.
But like 3 years ago.
Yeah. And the other thing is you get a lot more games too. I mean, 2014 when I started this, I don't think I played 100 solo games. And now I could easily come up with 200 that I've actually played.
All right, Anthony. So I pointed out the little bit of a war game clumping. What does anything else leap out to you about this section of the list?
Yeah, nothing huge. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see Star Trek Frontiers creep up a little bit. Last year it was sitting right at the bottom of the list at 100. So, and we talked about, it's kind of new. Maybe it'll move up. And it did. So that's kind of interesting to see. I think that game's gotten a little bit stronger feedback from people over time than it initially had when there was like, it's not as good as the other one. So
that shall be unnamed.
Yeah.
For spoilers, we don't know if that other one is still on the list.
Another one that I'm really happy to see on here too that I love is Oh My Goods, which surged on up and got a little. It's not quite a Euro; it's just a single deck of cards, but it's a Pfister game. It's very German, so I'm happy to see that one here as well. And that's with the expansion, so I guess that kind of fits, with expansion, jumping up on the list.
There you go. Any particular favorites you have on this section, Kevin?
Well, the Hoplomachus. I love the whole series, so I'm glad to see Origins on here.
How did you handle the different versions of that?
I kept them separate.
Really? Even keeping them separate, Hoplomachus Origins is this high.
And if someone just put Hoplomachus, I asked them which one. So most of the time they said Origins, but every one of them got votes. Lost Cities, Rise of Rome, they all got votes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I mentioned before that the whole concept of the hype train. So this is from BGG user Minhia. I hope I'm getting that pronunciation correctly. So a debut that experienced the biggest dip. It's not a significant thing. Like -27 is not going to make a huge space a thing, but Deep Space D6 would probably be the thing that qualifies for that. Big, like people were just loving this game. It was a 2015 print and play, and then kickstarted and delivered in 2016. People were just like, wow, this is awesome, including that and another dice game, which shall be, maybe we'll see that game later. But people were loving on Deep Space D6, and then another Kickstarter, but I think it's kind of died down a little bit now. That's settled down a little bit more. But still, again, that is not a huge dip. Like if this was a Dice Tower list, it probably would have shot right off the list. But people are pretty solid on it.
Yeah, give it some time. Like you said, there's another Kickstarter, and so probably next year we'll see it bump right back up. So,
one that did drop a lot. I'm just making sure it is in the right range. Is the Warhammer Quest? Right? It makes me wonder because they lost the license for it, and basically there's no more expansions. People just stop playing it.
I am shocked it's still this high, to be honest with you, because we got that announcement way early in the year, and people have been complaining about it. And then they had that failed Kickstarter, like that Epic AF, that took the system, but it made it like toilet humor, and people were really mad about that. And so it just kind of like the cloud hanging over that whole system. But at the end of the day, I mean, I know it dropped, but people are still loving on it. Gotta tell you guys though, you guys are missing out on Aventuria adventure card game. If you want something that does similar stuff, but it's current and getting expansions, that's one to look for.
Yeah, I've been looking into it, but I haven't seen it played, and I want to.
Yeah, it's very local to the German kind of IP, German sensibility. So I think that's maybe a little bit of a barrier, plus distribution and stuff like that. But if you just, if you get past some of those barriers, that's a really good one. I was going to mention Warhammer Quest, the adventure card game, as well.
I got one more. I'm really surprised that Descent wasn't a lot higher.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not for me. I didn't particularly like it with the app, not compared to a lot of other games with their AI. But especially when I look on the Facebook solo page, oh my God, I mean, every day people are talking about it and they're recommending it, and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to gaming. And now that the Star Wars one is out, they're saying the same thing about that, and it's like I'm surprised. I really expected a lot more votes for that, just because it seems like I'm always hearing about it.
What do you think is behind that? Like, I'm looking at your numbers over here. Only 37 out of 400 people put it on their list, which is not, I mean, I think it's normal for this range, but it's not like it was, on a bunch of people's list, but really low. It really didn't appear on a lot of people's lists at all.
Right. And I guess that surprised me. I would have guessed double that number, because I thought a lot of people already had it. And so you just, you get the app for free, and all of a sudden you got a solo game, but it hasn't really panned out, it seems.
I think that there's a competition thing. It's a really crowded space. There are a couple of games that we have not mentioned yet that we're not going to spoil anything, but you guys know there's going to be a couple of games that are coming up that are in the adventure space. They're dudes on a map, they're dudes in a dungeon, and there's only so many of those we can play. I really think that is kind of what's happening. Like if Descent was anything special, but because it was the first one and the app is good, but there's a little wonkiness to it. There's other ones that have done it a little bit better. Maybe that's why. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I just expected it higher. I'm glad it's not.
All right. So that does it for our coverage of the top 100 People's Choice solo games of 2017. We did 1 to 100 through 51. And I am, just to let you guys know behind the fourth wall, there was a little bit of a faux pas where we accidentally spoiled a number in the top list, but we edited that out just for you guys. We want to keep this pure for you guys, keep this exciting. So, and I will not reveal who did the spoiling. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I think that is all I got for this week.
Yeah, just make sure you go back and listen to the episode twice. Help our numbers out a little bit, and you can see if you can find that hard cut. See how good Jason did on the cut.
Awesome.
So that's going to go ahead and be everything for this week, guys. We are going to go ahead and continue talking and have another episode here where we dive into the top 50, but you're going to have to wait another week until that's all released along with the list on BGG. So until then, why don't you hop on over to the solo gaming list on BGG. You can take a look at those the initial 50 and leave any comments or have conversations, or you can hit us up as well and let us know what you think of our opinions of the list if you have problems on that side. You can find us on BoardGamersAnonymous.com. We are on Twitter at ENGN_podcast. We are in all the groups, both on BGG and on the Facebook solo group. So make sure you hop in there. Let us know what you think. Make sure you join the conversation. But until next time, go ahead and grab a solo game off the shelf, and let's make every night game night.
Later, everybody.